Hey guys, it's Chris and welcome back to another House of the Dragon video. Today we're talking episode 4, and I apologize this is a little bit late this week, but I had a lot going on. So House of the Dragon episode 4 is getting really good, it's getting really dark, and relationships are changing quickly. We open up with Renera looking for a husband at Storm's End, by the way. We see her sitting with Boros Baratheon. We see a Dondarrion. If you remember Beric Dondarrion from the main show Game of Thrones, this would be his ancestor. We see Blackwood, we see Brackens, we see Malisters, we see a random Strong that I have no idea who it is. And what was really cool here is the little shout out in A Song of Ice and Fire to the Blackwoods versus the Brackens. This is a long-standing feud in A Song of Ice and Fire lore, and I thought this might be Sam Blackwood and Amos Bracken as far as the timeline goes, but I think they have a role to play later. But this is a really good Easter egg for this Song of Ice and Fire book series, as the Blackwoods and Brackens are houses that have been at war for a long, long time, and the Brackens even apparently burned the weirwood tree of the Blackwoods as well. So a long-standing feud, so I believe these were made-up characters for the show. And I did think we were going to see the little Blackwood kid get killed or something, but apparently not. It looks like he got his first taste of blood as he killed the Bracken guy, which was a little unexpected. But anyway, Renera ends it early as she's tired of taking these suitors. They're too old, they're too young, they're not right for her, and she knows it's all a political game anyway. And I will say Renera here is acting a little bit more bratty lately, as she has been heir for a while now. And I really love Millie Alcock in this role as well, and next week I think will probably be her last episode as the young Renera. But it goes to show how the writing is so good. You're getting to see the change in these characters already. And then we cut over to the throne room as the king Viserys calls court as Damon returns to King's Landing. He does the flyby with Caraxes as well, and we see the little smile from Renera. But either way, Damon shows up and offers his crown of the Stepstones to his brother Viserys and says the Stepstones are yours. And so they kind of make up temporarily, only to cause trouble later, of course. And Viserys does what he does best and throws a party, gets drunk, and we get a good little shot here of Allison and Renera talking for a couple of minutes here. They're still friends for now, but you can see how their relationship has changed, which is kind of the theme of this episode as far as playing your role, where Allison is now sitting there playing the role as the queen, and Renera just seeks freedom. We see Damon and Renera talking again for the first time in a few years, apparently, and they're getting a little bit closer here. You can see that Renera has been smitten with Damon. She does respect him, and she likes him to some degree here, obviously, as there are a lot of shots of her smiling at him during various situations. And of course that comes into play later. Then we get the news that Corlys Velaryon wants to marry his daughter Laena to a Sea Lord's son in Braavos, and that puts a lot of pressure on Viserys because he did not take Laena to wife earlier in the series. And now he has to make a move to make sure the Velaryons are back in the fold as far as joining their houses. And of course that's what happens in the end of the episode when he finally says, Renera, you have to marry Laenor Velaryon since she's messed around too long, shut down all the suitors, even though she had a free choice, although it's still not really much of a choice. And Viserys finally puts his foot down and says, you marry Laenor Velaryon. But in return, Renera makes a deal and says, I'll do my duty as heir, but you have to get rid of your weasel on your council, Sir Otto Hightower, who of course had her followed. And finally, Viserys realizes what he's been doing the whole time. We see a quick shot of Allison holding, I believe, Helena at this point. I was saying in the live stream right after the show that she might have been holding Aemon, but I didn't really get a close look at it. Didn't think about the time period as well. And again, it follows the theme of Allison just doing her duty as queen. We were never really given the relationship details between Allison and Viserys in the book, but at least for the TV show, it seems to be they care for each other, but she still sees it as a duty as opposed to a loving marriage. And of course, she'll never, in Viserys' eyes, replace Aemma Arryn. We get the really cool scene that kind of juxtaposes that as well, when Renera goes back to her chambers and she finds a disguise as well as a little map of a secret passageway, which is really cool callback to Game of Thrones as well. We know Tyrion knew all these passageways from the books and show. We know Varys used them in a lot in the show as well. These were all the hidden passageways that Maegor the Cruel had built throughout the Red Keep. And it seems Damon knows about them as well, so it was really cool that he left that there to let her get out to the Street of Silk, Flea Bottom, etc., and see King's Landing from a different perspective, which I think is really important for her as heir to the Iron Throne, to get the perspective of the small folk and not just the lords and ladies. So this is a really cool shot of them going through experiencing all these things. They experience the play, talking about her. They obviously go to the brothel, but this is juxtaposed while Allison is just in her chambers playing her role as queen, doing what she has to do, while Renera essentially experiences at least one night of freedom. So I'm loving the way they do these juxtapositions throughout this show so far to really get across these themes, and they hammer them home even stronger when you see them happening at the same time. And this, of course, leads to the controversial scene where we're seeing, again, this juxtaposition. So Viserys is calling on Allison, a little booty call there in the Red Keep. She's playing her role as queen. Again, while Renera's out for the night, essentially experiencing freedom and seeing the world through different eyes. And of course, her and Damon start to play around in the brothel, and she gets into it, but then Damon has a problem and essentially just leaves her there. And she heads back to her room. Of course, we saw the kid get up and follow her as well, so now we know there's a spy on her, working for Maester, the White Worm, or Lady Misery, who is then in turn working for Otto Hightower. But she makes her way back to the Red Keep into her room, and Sir Criston Cole is still standing outside the door, obviously as her personal guard. He's a bit confused when she walks back in the same door that she had just went in a couple hours earlier, but she was out on the town, she had a few drinks, and she made a move, and Sir Criston Cole took the bait and fell for it. Now, this has been a bit of a controversial scene, because on one hand, while Sir Criston Cole probably did desire her, and who wouldn't, and although ultimately he made the choice and went through with it, I'm not sure that he really had a choice because of the power dynamic. Maybe she wouldn't have said a thing if he would have said no, perhaps. But either way, it was a really good shot to kind of show this when they showed him thinking about the decision and folding his white cloak. So it definitely weighed on his mind. It's something he wanted to do, but at the same time, he wasn't sure if he should do it, because of course the King's Guard swear vows of celibacy, which I think is insane in the first place. But either way, this could go very, very wrong for him because of who she is, and there's no doubt this will definitely affect their relationship going forward as the parties of the Blacks and the Greens start to form when we get into the actual Dance of the Dragons. So ultimately, he did think it through and make the choice, but I think that's fairly important as they're showing that no matter who you are in Westeros, sometimes you don't really have a choice, regardless if you're a man or a woman, because they did juxtapose this again with Allison kind of laying there while Viserys did his business. She obviously was not into it, but she was doing her duty, while at the same time Renera was kind of using Criston Cole for a plaything, which is fine. Again, he did choose to go through with it himself, but in this case, he was almost just like Allison, where he was also just doing his duty. And of course, as I mentioned before, there was a spy following Renera, so Otto Hightower gets the news as we learned that Maester, the White Worm, is now selling information instead of her body. That'll come back to play later on as well as we get into the actual Dance of the Dragons. But Otto, of course, tells Viserys that Renera screwed Damon, and of course, Allison overhears this. But Viserys essentially started to catch on and finally admitted he knew what was going on, as he knows Otto Hightower has ambitions for his own grandson, Aegon. And again, remember, Otto Hightower is the one who recommended to Viserys that he name Renera heir in the first place. So Damon is then confronted in the throne room as he makes his way back to King's Landing, still drunk from the night before. And Viserys and him have it out, but Damon doesn't even deny it. Damon actually didn't do anything. This is the same thing that happened where we're not sure how he said heir for a day, whether that was a joke or whether he actually said that in an actual respectful manner, literally toasting his young nephew, Balon. But either way, he does not deny it, and he admits he wants Renera, and he says, "Marry me to Renera like the Targaryens of old." It doesn't matter that we have more than one wife. Aegon the Conqueror did it. A lot of references to Aegon the Conqueror throughout this episode as well. But Viserys gets mad at him once again and banishes him back to the Vale. So we'll see him in the Vale next week with his bronze bitch. And be sure to check out the video I did on the episode 5 preview if you want to know what Damon's going to be doing in the Vale next week. Then we go over to Renera having a conversation with her father Viserys about the dagger and the prince that was promised. So it turns out when you heat the blade up, it actually says in old Valyrian glyphs, I suppose, "From my line comes the prince that was promised, and his song will be the song of ice and fire." This is clearly a Jon Snow shout out here, so another little good Easter egg. And of course, the cat's paw dagger, as we call it, ended up being the one that killed the Night King. But they really keep harping on this prophecy and how it's so important to pass down from king to king, or king to heir in this case. But a really good part of this conversation with Viserys and Renera here is that it doesn't matter what the truth is, only perception. And of course, that's part of the problem that leads to this whole entire war in the first place. And finally, as I mentioned before, he does say enough is enough. You're going to marry Laenor Velaryon. I'm going to propose this wedding to the Sea Snake to get him back into the fold. And she does agree to do her duty as heir if he gets rid of Otto Hightower, and so he does. He brings him in, talks about the past a little bit. At least Viserys has some backbone here, showing him that he knows the truth now. He realized that Allison was a plan the whole time and says, "Bye, bitch," and sends it back to Old Town. But of course, that doesn't mean he's really done with his politicking. He will play a major role in the wars to come. And finally, we get the shot of the Maester coming in to visit Renera late at night. Says he's sent by the king, and of course he brings in moon tea. Now, moon tea, of course, is the tea that a woman could drink as a quote-unquote plan B. So although she swears that she didn't do anything with Damon, but omits the fact that she did something with Criston Cole, the king sends moon tea just in case to make sure she doesn't have any unwanted pregnancies. Because again, the idea of perception has to be that she's a pure maiden to be married off to whoever. So a really cool underlying theme about reality versus perception. And I'm really enjoying how, even though a lot of us have read the books, we don't get all the details, so now we're really getting some insight into these characters, and they are all gray, so it's not just as black and white as people make it out to be. So really enjoying House of the Dragon. Let me know what you think in the comments below. As usual, thank you for all the support, especially you guys on Patreon, and a huge shout out to my executive Patreon SmokeScreen producers. And of course, if you dig what I do here, please give these videos a like, comment, and a share, and hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything, and try to help the channel get back on track to 100,000 subscribers. So again, thanks for clicking, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.